Good evening, and right before we dive in, I'd like to quickly mention that earlier today on Epoch TV, I published an awesome interview between myself and Dr. Peter McCullough, wherein we discussed the inside story of how Pfizer's latest vaccine booster bivalent formulation was released to the market without any completed human clinical trial data. It's a very nuanced conversation, which unfortunately is not welcome here. And so if you'd like to check it out, the link will be right there at the top of the description box. You can click it and watch it over on Epoch TV. Now, getting back to the main topic. Just yesterday, during a congressional inquiry over in Washington, D.C., the current director of the CDC, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, she made a rather shocking admission. When asked about it, Dr. Walensky had to admit that the existing mRNA-based COVID vaccines, the ones that are currently available on the market, do not prevent the transmission of any of the current virus subvariants. Here's a short excerpt from that exchange. The ever-trusty government official telling us that the reason for the flip-flop is the evolution of science. But here's the odd factor. In her statement, as you just heard, Dr. Walensky backed up her earlier claims, the ones that she made on different news outlets such as MSNBC, by saying that the data at the time was showing that the vaccines were preventing transmission. However, that is not really the full picture. And in order to see the full picture, I need to back up for a quick moment and set the stage for you properly about what was happening. And by the way, I hope that if you do appreciate content like this, you do take a super quick moment to smash those like and subscribe buttons, which quite literally forces the YouTube algorithm to share this information out to ever more people. Now, to start with, this right here is Pfizer, the company that, from a financial standpoint at least, was one of the biggest winners in regards to the COVID pandemic. That's because while other companies like Amazon, like Zoom, or even like Charmin, which manufactures toilet paper, they did pretty well during the pandemic. Pfizer, with their COVID vaccine, well, they blew it completely out of the park. According to their corporate filings, the COVID vaccine brought Pfizer an unprecedented $36.8 billion in sales, making it the undisputable #1 best-selling pharmaceutical product in a single year ever, which makes sense, given the fact that you had governments across the entire world encouraging people and sometimes even outright forcing people to take the product. For instance, right here in New York, people were not able to enter gyms, coffee shops, restaurants, museums, and so on if they didn't show proof that they took the product. Likewise, over in Europe, the European Commission introduced a vaccine passport system, which was an app on your phone that would change colors based on your vaccination status. That was the situation throughout the entirety of the world. And as most things were during the pandemic, these vaccine passport and vaccine mandate schemes, they were sold to the general public as a way to protect both themselves as well as others. Young people especially were encouraged to get the shot, not necessarily for themselves, but in order to save grandma. Because after all, if you got the shot, the narrative went, you would be a dead end for the virus. However, there is a funny phenomenon in this world, which is that regardless of what kind of well-spun hyperbole you might say out in public, well, typically, while speaking before Congress, you need to tell the truth. That's because while testifying, a person is held under penalty of perjury, meaning that if they don't tell the full truth, they will face actual criminal consequences. And so, with that in mind, during a vaccine-related hearing in Europe that was held late last year, there was a Pfizer executive who conceded that prior to entering the market, neither her nor any other officials over at Pfizer knew whether or not the COVID vaccine would actually stop transmission. Here is Ms. Janine Small, Pfizer's president of International Developed Markets, answering a question in front of the European Council.
The Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market. If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
The trusty speed of science sounds eerily similar to the evolution of science as mentioned by our own CDC director. Regardless, what her testimony meant in practice is that under oath, this executive conceded that prior to entering the market, Pfizer did not know whether their product could actually stop the spread, which, by the way, in and of itself is not really a secret, because for the people who are paying attention to all the details and the nuance, well, it's true that Pfizer never claimed to be able to stop the transmission. However, the reason that this is still so relevant is because stopping the spread was the basis of a lot of vaccine-related messaging, as well as vaccine-related decisions that came out from governments around the world. For instance, we here at the Epoch Times, we actually got an interview with the Dutch member of Parliament, the Dutch member of the European Parliament, Mr. Rob Roos. He was the man who actually was questioning the Pfizer executive in that clip we watched a moment ago. And here's how he explained the significance of her remarks as they pertain to Europe.
Yeah, we put it online and it was crazy. It went so viral because everyone in the Western world, I can speak for them, I think, had the feeling they were fooled, really fooled by the governments. And that's not what governments should do. They're chosen to serve the people, but they fooled the people. It was a false narrative, and of course some people didn't know, but there are really a lot of people who did know, and they abuse their power, because during a crisis you can do all kinds of things that you normally are not able to do.
Now, I'm sort of imagining what might happen, right? The governments will say, well, it's actually the vaccine companies, the big pharma that fooled us, right?
But that's not true. There was a lot of media attention in the Netherlands about me, that I was creating misinformation. Mr. Bourla also treated Mr. Rose is giving misinformation, because we never said it was tested on stopping the transmission. But that was not my argument. My argument was that our governments said that. But Mr. Bourla could have said to our governments, listen, we didn't test it on that. You better not push people to these vaccines with this argument. He didn't do that because there's a lot of money involved, of course. Our governments, why didn't they ask the same question that I did? Maybe they did. Maybe they knew. But if they didn't know, they should have asked. I'm sure they knew. They abused it.
All right, the sponsor of today's episode is a phenomenal company called AMAC. That's AMAC, and it stands for the Association of Mature American Citizens. They are quite literally one of the fastest growing conservative organizations in all of America, and you should consider joining for three main reasons. The first is the money-saving benefit, because as a member of AMAC, you get access to a ton of discounts at many different verticals. Things like vitamin stores, restaurants, retail shops, and so on and so forth. If you want to check out the full list, it's pretty exhaustive, you can do so over on AMAC's website. The second benefit is that you get exclusive access to the AMAC magazine. It'll be delivered directly to your doorstep, and it contains phenomenal coverage as well as deep analysis. And then the third benefit, the one that people say is their favorite, is that AMAC fights for your values over on Capitol Hill. In fact, you can check out the online version of this on their website. It's the AMAC Action Advocacy Annual Report, and it shows exactly what they're doing on Capitol Hill in terms of fighting what they call the socialist storm that's brewing in this country. So head on over to amac.us/factsmatter and sign up today. I'll also throw a link down in the description box below. And of course, it really is worth mentioning that this messaging was not limited to Europe alone, because right here in the US, stopping the spread was also used to justify many different decisions across the entirety of the country. For instance, here's a short timeline. At the end of 2020, when the FDA just issued the emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine, this is what they also wrote on their website. Quote, "At this time, data are not available to make a determination about how long the vaccine will provide protection, nor is there evidence that the vaccine prevents transmission of SARS-CoV-2 from person to person." Likewise, around that same time period, you had Mr. Albert Bourla, who is the CEO of Pfizer, say that his company was, quote, "not certain whether or not those who receive the vaccine will still be able to transmit COVID to other people." He said, quote, "I think this is something that needs to be examined. we are not certain about that right now. Furthermore, Dr. Deborah Birx, who at the time was the White House COVID response coordinator under the Trump administration, she said that there was evidence in December of 2020 that individuals who received the vaccines, including Pfizer's vaccine, could still transmit the virus to others. However, despite all these statements, in May of 2021, Dr. Fauci said during an interview with CBS that vaccinated people were quote-unquote dead ends for COVID, suggesting that they could not transmit the virus. Here was his full quote while speaking to CBS, quote, "When you get vaccinated, you not only protect your own health and that of the family, but also you contribute to the community health by preventing the spread of the virus throughout the community. In other words, you become a dead end to the virus. And when there are a lot of dead ends around, the virus is not going to go anywhere." Now, perhaps Dr. Fauci was in possession of data that we did not have access to, but that perhaps was not really the case, because just 2 months later, 2 months after he made that statement, he had to reverse course and issue a correction statement, clarifying that vaccinated people can still spread the virus to others. Take a listen.
We are seeing that the ability of individuals who are infected through breakthrough infections, namely vaccinated people who ultimately get infected, that they are generally without symptoms or minimally symptomatic. However, it is clear that they are capable of transmitting the infection to uninfected individuals.
Likewise, in August of the same year, while discussing the Delta strain of the virus, the CDC published a statement over on their website which said this, quote, "Fully vaccinated people with Delta variant breakthrough infections can spread the virus to others." However, perhaps Mr. Joe Biden was not aware of all this because in October of 2021, while he was justifying his vaccine mandates for military and healthcare personnel, he made the claim that those with the vaccine cannot spread the virus to others. That was his justification for his vaccine mandates. Here was him speaking in front of the nation. Quote, "We are requiring active duty military to be vaccinated. We're making sure healthcare workers are vaccinated because if you seek care at a healthcare facility, you should have the certainty that the people providing the care are protected from COVID and cannot spread it to you." That is a rather absolute statement. However, while there was a study from Singapore published around that time which suggested that those who are vaccinated might spread the virus less virulently to others, that really is irrelevant because Joe Biden's absolute claim, which he used to justify his vaccine mandates, was patently false. And it was still patently false 2 months later when Joe Biden again repeated it during an interview over in the state of Ohio. Here's what he said, quote, "The unvaccinated, not the vaccinated, the unvaccinated, that's the problem. Everybody talks about freedom and not to have a shot or have a test. Well, guess what? How about patriotism? How about making sure that you're vaccinated so you do not spread the disease to anyone else?" Essentially, get the shot in order to protect grandma. Now, those particular claims were so egregiously false that even the fact checkers over at PolitiFact, they had to bend the knee and rate it mostly false, which for them is a pretty big deal. But that was pretty much the extent of the backlash against Joe Biden's false claims, which he was using to justify mandates across the entire country, which really makes you wonder how when you and I lie to the government, it's considered a felony, but when the government lies to us, well, it's just considered politics, which can be justified by the ever-evolving science. Regardless, if you'd like to watch the full exchange that took place over in the European Commission, or if you'd like to watch the congressional testimony that Dr. Rochelle Walensky gave just yesterday, all that will be down in the description box below. And then lastly, as I mentioned at the very top of the episode, if you'd like to watch an awesome interview between myself and Dr. Peter McCullough, wherein we discuss the inside story of how the latest bivalent booster from Pfizer was approved without any finished human clinical trials, well, you can check it out over on Epoch TV. The link will be right there at the top of the description box. Just click on that link and you can head on over to Epoch TV and watch the interview right away. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed. Most importantly, stay free.